This is another in our series of internal software design reviews for the upcoming version of Wolfram Language. This one is about new visualization functions. So let's get started. Okay, so what is this data?
Well, it wasn't saved with it. It's
Okay.
it's same type of data that you give to GeoHistogram. So you have a bunch of points.
So could I mean, like if I, for example, were to take data from our favorite meteorite landings or something,
yeah,
I could get
right. So that same data that you have, points for.
So is it okay? So if I get this, come on. Okay, great. So now I say
GeoSmooth histogram of percent.
Why is this spinning like that?
What's spinning?
Sign. What? I don't know. Dynamic evaluation. Why is there a dynamic evaluation even happening there? Well, this is okay, but that, I guess that doesn't really matter. Well, this is going to time out again, but okay. So basically that's going to work with okay. So let's say this.
I wonder if it's working with data set. Kernel crashed.
Okay, well,
or with the dynamics or something.
Okay. Okay, now let's get that.
Okay, hit it with normal.
Okay. So it needs to work with data set?
Yep.
Okay, so that's 45,000 things. Should it work okay with that?
It will after today. 45,000 is going to take, I have no idea how long in this build.
Okay, so let's do
just a geo position or yeah, take is fine.
1,000 of them?
Sure. I don't remember how many percents can you go?
As many as you want.
Really?
Infinite percents.
I thought there was a limit to that.
Nope.
Wow.
I think the parser just okay. That's very nice. So what can I do? Why does this thing have this weird left hand?
That's the opacity, because often when you have a map underneath, you actually want to see the map.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So where it's white, Stephen, it's transparent.
Oh, I see. So that's a way of indicating that it's indicating the transparency of that color on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Do you really need that? I mean, do you really need that in the legend?
I think it's very informative, just as it is for density plot 3D. So you see what it is you see, because you might, that's also a usability thing, because you might want to highlight something.
So okay, so let me look at the geos. Where's the page? So what controls? So if I have a transfer function or something that says what the how do I?
There's an opacity function option similar to a color function.
I never heard of an opacity function. Where else do we have opacity functions?
The 3D density plots, density plot 3D and list density plot 3D that we added in 10.2, I think.
But so is there an analogous, what is the analogous 2D histogram thing that would make, so this, I see, when there isn't a background, then this would just be this would just be histogram.
Smooth density histogram would be the non-geo one.
And why does this get to use itself? Why does this get to not say density? Because obviously the fact that it's geo means it's 2D, so you don't really have to say density histogram.
Right, and would mean we took the opportunity to save a little bit of a mouthful.
Fair enough.
The other thing is that one important thing, for these kinds of things, you often want intensity rather than density. So density, in the statistical sense, often think of them as normalized. You integrate to 1 over it. Whereas intensity, they kind of integrate to count.
Fair
so
enough.
You see that this number of events per area.
Lighting angle. Where's there a lighting angle here? What's the lighting angle doing?
So that is the thing, it's one of those things, one of those options where it just chains down to this function. So was it around version 7 or something, we added lighting angle to list density plot when we were working on relief plot.
Oh, I remember the relief plot.
Right.
Lighting
And
angle
so
here.
then smooth
if I say-
density is built on top of density. And so then it gets lighting angle and
What on earth is this?
percent.
Yeah.
No, I think you want %2. Or is it %1? Unknown option. I see. So it didn't actually get
No,
in.
lighting angle doesn't support it. I don't know what it would possibly do.
Look at the density plot. Go to density plot.
Just the density plot.
Yes, just regular function density plot.
Okay.
Okay, go to its option, lighting angle.
Okay.
Meaning, okay. Now you go to a different page. Yeah, you can look at that. Or you can look at density plot under option under the option section for lighting angle, and you'll see it applied to density plot.
Okay. But so this should work. So this is just a bug.
Yeah.
Does it look nice?
In density plot, it looks interesting sometimes. If you look at the options for density, the option section for density plots.
Okay. Anyway, but most of these things are. By the way, maybe we should have jump down links from here to the documentation for that. Maybe we should have a. We could have a jump down link here.
That would be better.
You mean one of the little numeric things, or something that's more stylized? And
No, we have the little greater than sign. It's just a question of putting in the link anchors.
Right.
Can you suggest that to Brian to see whether we can investigate doing that? When there is a section underneath for one of these things, it should be programmatic to do that.
Right, and that would actually be sort of very useful.
It would be.
Right. So can you communicate that to Brian?
Yeah, I'll make a note and.
Yeah, because it would just be a little greater than sign right after this, and if you click the text, it would go there. Okay, whatever. It's way down here, and this is open by default for some weird reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's filed.
It doesn't even have it in here, unless
Really?
I don't know my alphabet. Yeah.
Okay, so just pick that one at the top and say. Yeah,
right,
one of those.
let's not spend more time on this.
Okay,
I don't think we need
fair
to.
enough.
Okay, so my question is, why aren't there named opacity functions? Since there's obviously one named opacity function for image 3D, are there any relevant named opacity functions for this case?
I mean, at the moment, it's just an automatic one that is sort of ramping up from 0 and then holds level sort of in the middle and then ramps up to 1 at the end. And that should be just sort of constant.
In this context, that's what's being used, Stephen, because that means that where there's very low density of events, it get effectively transparent.
Yeah, except that I think there's a bug here, right? Because, first of all, there's a bug about why. I would have thought it would center on the Greenwich meridian here, rather than having. But why did it have this piece chopped out?
That looks like a bug to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. And there's also a bug on the legend on that case that I need to look into.
Well, that should be a constant opacity in that legend, right?
Right. It should be, gray level 0.3 or whatever, or 0.7 maybe, the light gray all the way up and down instead of the red.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Let me just see what other options there are here. But this looks nice. I mean, it's what does scaling functions do for a geoplot?
I think that's probably just included via copy paste.
Okay, so that's a bug.
I mean, there's a possibility that scaling the intensity might be useful in some case, but for the most part, I don't think so.
Well, but I know, but a scaling function for the x-axis of something like, square root, comma, square root, is that going to do anything other than something completely stupid?
No, probably just something completely stupid if it does anything. I think it didn't do anything.
Right. So I claim that might be a bug. I claim you don't want scaling functions for these geo things.
Well, I mean, so scaling functions has the ability to scale the values, the intensity. Like in this case, if we do support it, it wouldn't have anything to do with the XY projection-y space.
I see. Okay, so I mean, so I see. So we could just say log there.
Right.
And we should get the log intensity.
Right.
Be a little bit funky.
Ooh, that's
sigh. Okay. Well, not finished yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Another bug. I'm doing well here. This is a bug every 30 seconds or so.
But makes you happy.
No, it doesn't. It makes me unhappy. I want to do badly on that. Okay, let's keep going. All right. This looks like a nice function though.
Mm-hmm.
Much better than geohistogram. Frankly, when we knit, we should really push this one instead of geohistogram, I think. I've never really liked what geohistogram does. It looks too much like a beehive.
Right.
I mean, maybe it looks okay for very large numbers of points, but otherwise it's sort of too beehive oriented. Okay, let's look at this. List plot 3D new. Oh, that's
so
cool.
Yeah. So one thing, Stephen, I don't know if you noticed, but all these labels, they're billboards, so they always face the camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I put text labels in there?
Yeah. That's the primary
use. So if I do this with labeled, well, okay.
You can just put text.
I mean, just change random color to random word, or who knows how many are actually going to get labeled? Because
well, so what determined? Oh, that's very cool. That's really cool. That's very nice for those points are way too
big. Right, and so what it's doing.
Why are those points so big?
I'll take a look at that. But so what's happening is
probably like feature
our label avoidance code based on the initial viewpoint.
Okay.
So when you rotate, it's not relabeling anything.
Well, that's good. I don't think it should. I think that would be super confusing. But it would be really good to be able to get, how do I specify the label density? How do I want, if I say I want all of them labeled, how do I say that?
You give an explicit label position.
Explain.
So if you say, what do you have? Call out there. So if you do call out random real random word comma above, say.
This is very obscure. It's cool the way that they do this. I mean, the overlap is kind of cool. What is it exactly doing? It's doing some kind of opacity.
We're using so we're using a scrim. There's a trick that's been developed for mobile phone, for smartphones, because it's so short on real estate. Okay, and so that's why you can see
that. I know that word from like 50 years ago or something, for meaning something. What does it mean?
It means it's a surface that's transparent, so you can see what's underneath.
No, but it comes from like like cut.
Oh yeah, it comes from a sort of when you did graphics art by having like a scrim, what do you call that? A thing with holes in. Fine
That's
holes.
what I thought it was. That's what I thought. I thought open weave fabric used for curtain in the theater.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, okay. So listen, this thing about how I didn't quite understand this. I mean, what if I wanted in an automatic position? Can I say automatic there, or is it then going to?
I mean, that's going to go back to the.
Yeah, I don't think this is quite right, because I think we need to have a way. There needs to be an easy way of defining this density. The same is true with feature space plot. It's kind of annoying that you can't get. I mean, maybe we should have a thing that says, I don't know, not labeled density, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, that is frustrating right now in feature space plot. Sometimes you just want more stuff labeled.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, have we got feature space plot 3D now?
Yes.
Next.
Good. Okay. All right. So anyway, but how do we specify how many? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we should have an option for all these functions that just says labeling criterion function, labeling density function, labeling.
Well,
density.
I mean, but we aren't really looking at the density.
Okay, what are we looking at? How are we deciding this?
We're deciding based on whether things overlap.
Okay, but I mean,
for every.
How did we decide not to label any of these guys here?
Because, based on what it thinks the image size is likely to be, how big the labels are, that sort of thing. It's computing little bounding boxes around all the labels and looking to see, if I put it here, is it going to collide with a point? If I put it there, is it going to collide with a point or another label?
Okay. Well, so but then one of the issues is what it thinks the image size is going to be.
Right.
Right. So we could tell it, so it is again kind of a density type thing. I mean, in other words, at that image size, right, a lot of things are going to overlap.
Right. So okay. So Stephen, do list point plot 3 of data equals your table.
Okay.
Okay. Just so we have that stored. Okay. And now do the same. Now do list point. Well.
Yeah, list point plot 3D of data.
With image size goes to 100.
Okay.
And so in that case, it's tiny and none of the points got a textual label. They all got pushed down into tooltips.
Okay. Whereas there, okay, cool. Okay, but the problem is on resize. I see. That's pretty cool. So does that happen in where the points are way too big? But does that happen in feature space plot 3D as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So in other words, this is what you're doing is at any given thing, you're saying label as if you were for a certain image size.
Right.
Right. And arguably the way you specify that. I mean, I didn't know this about feature space plot 3D. Nobody told me this, and I don't know whether it's in the examples. I think if it's going to, if we're really going to do it this way, it should be in the basic examples. There should be something that shows a bigger feature space plot 3D, saying it will render, it will put more labels if the thing is bigger.
Right, and so the other thing that's slightly different about feature space plot 3D is that by default it's not using callouts. By default, it's direct labeling.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. But then it goes to single points. But either way, whether it's feature space plot or feature space plot 3D, what you're saying is that it's determining its labeling practices by, depending on the actual absolute image size, right? Or the declared image size.
Right. Okay.
So how can we? So I didn't even know that. Is that a reasonable way to do it? Probably. Doesn't seem crazy to me. It's unintuitive that you get a different result. It's the only case I know of. Are there other cases where generating at a certain image size gives you a distinctly different result than generating and then, resizing?
There probably are. I'm trying to think what they would be.
And by the way, we should make a comment in the image size documentation about the fact that that might be the case, if it is indeed the case for anything real.
Mm-hmm.
And we should say in the image size, we should actually call out image size then in feature space plot here. We should say image size, and we should mention it in this list, in my view.
Okay.
And
Right.
then say that it determines this.
Right. Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, this is really cool though. I mean, this is very nice. So if I were to do, instead of call out, I were to do, well, what happens if I try to actually make the points be those words?
So set labeling function goes to center, or change your automatic to center.
Well, I'm going to say, yeah, okay, fine. But then what I want to say is that going to overwrite the words? I mean, overwrite the points? Okay, that looks pretty stupid.
Should overwrite the points. We'll take a look at that.
Are you sure? I mean, or should I be saying labeling, labeled? Let's try that.
I mean, labeled and call out aren't going to be significantly different.
In the case of center.
Right.
What other choices are there? There's also legended, right?
Well, legended is going to be completely outside of the plot.
I know. I want to see it happen.
You can have a whole bunch of blue swatches with labels and not be able to identify anything.
Okay. It's cool. But why didn't it change their colors in that case?
Because that's not what legended does.
Okay.
If you had something else that was changing the styles, then legended would pick those up. But
okay. Well, this is nice. All right. So the main thing here is just that call out now works in 3D. How generally does it work? Does it work on lines as well and things? Does it work on surfaces?
No. And no. So list point plot 3D is the initial 3D labeling
adventure. Okay, right.
And basically the reason is that list point plot 3D is filling the role for feature space plot 3D that list plot fills for feature space plot.
Okay. So this is our, oh boy, you cut the box off? Really? Is that what you want to do? I hate that.
Do you?
This front, but look, we're not doing it in general. I mean, I understand that the box doesn't make, okay, you're right. The box doesn't exactly make much difference in this case.
Well, I mean, so the thing is that initially we had, we followed feature space plot exactly and had no box.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Well, what about some kind of light gray box at least? What about, let's try making, okay, so let's do, this is taking its time. Why is it taking so long? Oh,
don't know.
Okay, so let's do box style, arrow, gray level, 0.9.
It's going to be darker. Oh, no, okay. Because the box should already be gray, because I don't think...
It's not very light gray. I mean...
No.
That to me looks better if we're going to do this. I mean, it has some weird, to my visual system, this has some weird thing where this, I mean, can you get it to do that? This thing is outwards for me.
Ah, I see.
I mean, I can get it to go in, I can get it to go out.
Box goes to true.
Yeah, okay, let's just do box goes to true.
I think that should give us all
Honestly, I think that's better. I think that doesn't have the possibility of jumping, but I think having gray level 0.8 is a reasonable, it gives you the reasonable three-dimensionality of it without something which we're not doing anywhere else. So in other words, set box to true and default box style of gray level 0.8.
Right. Can you take a quick look at Bubble Chart 3D? I'm trying to remember what it does. I think it has the full box, but grid lines on the back. No, it does do the...
Ugh. I'm not sure I'm that keen on that, actually. I mean, let's take a look at what... personally, those grid lines really, actually, frankly, bother me. I mean, I just don't see the point.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so then here, if we did the same thing,
Grid lines are going to end up being darker than the...
how do I get rid of the grid lines?
Face grids goes to false, none maybe.
What's wrong with that? Looks nice to me. What is wrong with that? Do we want to get graphics opinion? I think that looks a lot nicer than this, and it certainly looks a lot nicer than these non-commensurate grid lines. I mean, does it bother you deeply that the thing has a... I think it is, you know, less obscure to have this box that you always get rid of.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't especially care for the grid lines on the bubble chart, but
why do we have them? I mean,
I don't remember.
This is so much nicer looking. I'm sorry, guys. This is so much nicer looking than this one. Don't you think?
Okay. So then, you know, the question is, how far does that go? Are we changing plot 3D? Are we changing all of the...
No, what plot 3D doesn't have grid lines.
No. I mean, you know, everything that has a box. Are we lightening the box up?
I don't think it's as important. Okay, I admit that that's an issue here. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I think we could certainly lighten that box without fear of trouble.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that would then annoy me a little bit is sort of having those axes that are then darker. Just feels weird.
Should we get a graphics opinion? Well, I mean, even this one...
Here's what I suggest. I suggest that for 11.3, we'll turn the full box on for feature space plot 3D.
Look, this doesn't look bad to me. This looks better than this crazy thing, frankly. I think that's what we should do. I think we should get rid of face grids and we should turn on the box, and then we can discuss
lightening the box.
Right. I think when there are no axes, lightening the box makes sense. In other words, for feature space plot 3D.
Right. But I suspect that feature space plot 3D, even without the lighter and the full box,
it's still going to look decent.
It's still going to look decent.
Yeah, let's try it. It's fine. I mean, the box is a bit distracting, but it's just fine.
Right.
All right, look, shall we... I would prefer the box lighter. I think it's a bit distracting here because the box is really... There's no event on the box. There's no, you know, there are no axes and so on.
Which is why we cut off those front three edges.
I know. But then you get this weird, you know... I mean, this is already, look, honestly, in my visual system, I can get this thing to look like some weird frustum thing very easily with that as the
theoretically,
point.
You should be able to get even this one to invert.
No, I can. It's inverting for me. It's inverting beautifully.
Okay, I just got it. Oh, wait, no, I didn't.
Yeah, come on. You just have to think of this as the top, right? Then it's down there, and then it's inverted.
Yes.
Except that it has this this line is across it, which helps to prevent that, but doesn't completely prevent it. Okay, all right. So look, I think, does that seem like a reasonable conclusion?
I think so.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to have to run. You guys go over the vector updates. They're relatively small, but good.
Okay.
And they're going to serve up the better vector plots in the first place. There's a few more rounds to go, but then geo vector plots is another thing that's coming later.
Oh, that's exciting. We can get the wind.
Right. So here's the other thing, which is, I mean, so right now in this example, it's using item size. In your prototype build, depending when it's from, it's possibly been renamed to call out size.
So call out size, hold on a second. Is call out size a general, what am I saying? So one of the issues with feature space plot was deciding the size of the little icon-y things. Are we calling them call outs? I mean, why is it not something like, I mean, this is of things which are of variable size, namely images, for example. I would have thought that this should be something like, labeling image size or some such other thing, because these are image resizings, aren't they? I mean, if that was text,
they are, but it is more general than that.
Why? What else can we
like general things?
Yeah, I know. What else can we resize?
So what will happen is, with the default setting of automatic, pretty much that only applies to images, or similar graphic-y sorts of things. And general expressions.
Okay, so what if somebody has, the text of War and Peace or something? What is it going to do? Is it going to make it very small? Is it going to cut it off? It's going to show just the beginning of it? What's it going to do?
The plan is for it to show the beginning. There's a function page for it with some examples if you want to.
For what? For item size or call out?
Call out size.
Okay. That is a very unfortunate thing. Call out size is a size to be used for labels and call outs.
Right.
Not the best.
I mean, I'm completely open to different names.
Well, okay, but fine. But I mean, let's just understand what this does. So this is defining a bounding box for the image objects, and I see minimum width specified by S pixels. What about a scaled version of that?
Possibly we can do that in the future, but it'll probably, I mean, it'll run into.
Right. Okay.
I'm not entirely convinced that we can reliably implement it.
Okay. But what about things like text blocks here? Because that's not addressed by this. I mean, for example, we have in Pain, right? We have this mechanism for, resizing, or what is it doing? Image size
action. Shrink to shrink to fit and resize to fit, and
right.
Those sorts of
things. I mean, there's a certain argument, okay, that the right thing to do here would be to say something like, okay, that there are options that you're specifying that apply to the labels. In other words, so that they could be a list of options. One of them could be image size, arrow, 30 means 30 pixels, whatever, comma, image size action goes to shrink to fit or something like this. And one could, as a courtesy, one could combine those so that one could just say whatever this super function is, super option is. So what I'm suggesting is that there is a, I don't really like labeling. I mean, this will also need this in graphs and things like this, I suspect.
Right. And at the moment, this is sort of hooked up for list plot, bar charts. I definitely could imagine it going out, far and wide.
Okay, so what would happen if it was like this? all of that kind of thing.
Can you go back to the docs for pane real quick? I'm just imagining this with scroll bars.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be interesting, right? I mean, but actually, using pane, so that would be part of a labeling function, could be to actually use a pane there.
Right, and that's what this does in the case where it isn't an image or graphic. So if you have...
Okay, so if I do this, so you're telling me that if I were to do this thing here with text blocks, right? Is that right?
Right. I mean, so by default, nothing would happen because text would just, with callout size goes to automatic, text
Okay,
goes
so
to
if I say feature space plot 3D, and I say something like random word 30.
What?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
That is pretty cool. Is that using a sensible? Do you know? Were you?
I have no comment on this. What dimension reduce is doing.
Well, it seems to think that's pretty weird, actually.
I mean, so those words that are all clustered.
By the way, could you ask the let's see, feature space plot. Let's just see whether this does something sensible. It should be using those word to vecchi type things. I cannot tell. So random. I can't tell. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's one of those things where you look at it and you start to see patterns and you don't know whether they're really there or
just constellations. If it's the Big Dipper.
Yeah, I mean, so like on the left-hand side there, you have untie and unfastened, I think.
Yes, that's true. They're not even very close to each other.
But maybe that's not going off of that. Maybe it's...
I'm just sending mail about this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Right. But so now if you go down and you say call out size goes to 20, say.
Well, I don't think call out size is good. Is call out size?
No. Item size was what didn't work.
Oh, I see.
So probably call out size will, and you have the version where it's using ellipses.
As opposed to what?
Well, I mean, last night's build is using the little diagonal continuation character thing, and I talked to Min about that.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think the two best possibilities are ellipses or just chop it off and nothing.
No, this is nice. This is nice. I like this. I mean, but now, we've got snippet, for example, which is another way of dealing with textual stuff, right? Mm-hmm. We've got thumbnail, we've got snippet. But so the question is really, what is the general way to deal with okay, so let's just think this through for a second. So in principle, I could say, I see, these are plots where things represent themselves.
Oh, right? This is going to be awesome. Yeah. So sorry, I just realized I can go have Min watch the Twitch stream and...
Oh, yes, good idea.
The list of things for him to work on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. He could even join the meeting, He's not right. But okay. That is a good idea. Okay. So all right, let's
but anyway, so we're looking at the generalization of how to wrap labels.
Okay, actually, we have a question from talking of the live stream. We have a question. Any near-term plans for pan and zoom on 2D plots and graphs? The answer is yes. We have dynamic image already, right?
Right.
And I mean that's the way that we would. Except I can't that's the way we would do this, right? It's like if we're doing dynamic geographics. I mean,
personally, I like dynamic geographics better than dynamic image, but I may be biased.
Well, I understand, but dynamic geographics. I mean, let's just as an example here. I don't know.
You can just close it off. Yeah.
It'll make the Earth.
No, it'll make somewhere around Champagne.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So now the question is, and it is a good question, why are we not doing that why do we not have a dynamic graphics that does that for ordinary graphics?
It probably wouldn't be hard.
Or in particular, more interestingly, for something like a graph. In other words, we need a general wrapper that would allow one to explore an arbitrary thing rendered as graphics.
Right.
Which probably would be called something like dynamic display or some such other thing.
Yeah, I mean, the generic one would probably be the most useful because then, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily want dynamic graphics and dynamic grid and dynamic region.
I mean, dynamic geographics is a little bit special. But yeah, no, I think I mean we should look at that. It's a good. I mean, we've talked about this a number of times. If it's easy to do, we should do it.
So how would that?
I mean, the issue is,
or how would that relate to the graphics 3D?
I don't. That's. I mean, you because you can zoom graphics 3D, right? I mean, you can. The point about it is the reason we haven't done this. I mean, we talked about this 25 years ago. Okay, but what we had in mind then was being able to make plots of things like mathematical functions, where as you, as you pan, it computes more function, right? Which I think is which is a little bit like dynamic geographics, but honestly, that's less interesting these days than just having a really big plot and being able to explore different parts of it. You know. We should do this. Good idea. Whoever valued customer is on our live stream, thanks. Good idea. Are you going to make a note of that?
Yeah, there's notes of it already somewhere. I will make another note of it.
Okay, and I'm going to put it in another place.
So what do you think? Dynamic display or dynamic?
I'm thinking dynamic display, but I'm not sure. I think dynamic display is or dynamic show perhaps, but I think dynamic display is better. Dynamic show would be a little bit. I believe we used to long ago in the ancient world. Do we have this, or am I misremembering my? Yes, we have this, but I don't think it really exists. Yeah, as of version 6, display has been superseded. So there was a function called display, but it was used for doing things like displaying on tectonics oscilloscopes and things. But that's not really relevant. Okay. All right. Good. Let's go back here. So the issue is these are functions where the data renders for itself, so to speak. Am I making sense?
Right.
Which is different from all other kinds of plots where it's what can I say? It's where the plot is merely a representation of the data. It is not rendering for itself. Now, the only place where data renders for itself is in images, basically, where, so let's think through what this means. The data is rendering for itself, and the issue is, like an inset, inset, which is presumably what's ultimately being used, right? Inset is take a thing and render it inside another thing.
Right.
So in a sense, this might be more like inset options or something, but maybe that's too bizarre.
I mean, I think it really isn't.
Isn't what? It isn't inset? Or?
Well, no, I don't think it's inset options. Well, I mean, in starters, inset doesn't take any options, but
no, I understand. But It's
I mean, but it really is the formatting of
but
that
it's not
first
label.
argument.
It's not labels. It's the okay. So what are you doing here? So labeling function is call out, but you could do whatever you want there. You could say the size. Doesn't call out itself have a size option?
I don't think it does.
Or maybe it should have. Maybe it should have. Maybe therein lies our problem. Why not have it have an image size option? Or an image size action option?
Or yeah, image size and image size action. I mean, the question is that would lead to a syntax that I think is possibly more verbose than what you would want.
Because what would it
Well, I mean,
be?
so the syntax then would be something like labeling function goes to call out of automatic, comma.
Oh, you don't mean automatic because you mean, oh, you mean automatic for the, what's the first argument here? The data.
Well, I mean, it's the data. I mean, in the case of labeling function, the data is implied.
Okay, but you're basically telling me that, you know, really this is going to wind up being labeling function options. This is a cheap way to inject options into the labeling function.
Yeah, something like that.
Which could be elided down to labeling options, possibly. I mean, labeling functions arrow pane doesn't work, right? Because it's really not, the call out is the manner of labeling. The pane is the rendering of the label.
Actually, I think labeling function goes to pane will work.
Okay.
Well, do labeling function goes to panel. It'll be more obvious.
Okay, so like here, for example, you're saying that is totally bizarre.
That's more than I was expecting.
What are those numbers?
Indices of the points in the data, because the labeling function is getting multiple arguments.
Magnificent. So I see. So that's its second argument, is that, which is some kind of label for the panel. That's totally weird. Right. Yeah, so if I wanted to get
panel of slot 2 or something, then
no, I think I want panel of slot 1.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember which way labeling function goes.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, but what we're seeing here is very weird. Why did it decide that callouts were the order of, were the thing to do?
I'm a little bit surprised at that, because I would have expected that to be centered and, direct label with the panel.
Yeah, well, why wasn't it? I mean, so look, we've got 3 different things here. We've got we've got kind of okay. We've got the kind of how to apply the label. We've got what the label should look like. Is that correct?
What do you mean by how to apply the label?
Is it a call out? Is it
okay? Yeah, where it goes.
Because what we've got there is either a call out or it is the thing itself. Right? Which is, I mean, in principle, that's true for other places. No. I see. The thing itself thing is only relevant. Okay. So for example, in a geo plot, right? We can say geo label, and let's see, what do we do? If we want to put the name of a city, if we want to put Chicago on a map, right? What we have to do, I mean, that's again a little weird because we have an entity which has a name and also has a property of its geoposition.
Right.
So here, Again, what's really strange here is that in feature space plots, the thing, what other plots are there where the thing itself stands for, where there are derived coordinates from the thing? In fact, almost by definition, that's not going to happen because you need something deriving the coordinates, and feature space is a derivation of the coordinates.
Right.
Geographics is another derivation of the coordinates by virtue of its
I mean, I
geoposition.
think the closest analog to something like that is word cloud.
Okay, except that doesn't really have coordinates.
No.
Does word cloud have any options that are relevant to this?
Possibly. I haven't looked at the options of word cloud in a while. A bunch of font and text stuff.
No, I don't think it's going to.
Yeah.
Word spacings, spaced out around each word. I don't think so. Okay, so hold on. So this is, so how to apply the label. So in this, okay, actually the other question is what the label should look like, when to include a label, because that's the density thing.
Mm-hmm. Right, and in terms of when to include a label, there's functionality there that we haven't, that we've talked about but haven't started working on yet. So the case is, I mean, the case you brought up earlier was what happens if I want to force a label on everything.
Yes.
And then we have the automatic behavior, and then there's the medium ground, which is I want the automatic behavior, except these 10 things absolutely need to be labeled.
I see. Yeah, that's important. Is there a way to do that right now?
Not right now.
Okay, so that then one of the cases then is label at this density, label these fiducial things, that type of stuff.
Right.
Okay.
And probably whatever solution we come up will, in some way allow, here's the ranking on my labels. Here's the priority in terms of labeling them, where they may still be omitted, but in the case of this is colliding with that, this one wins.
Yeah, I understand. So a priority order for labels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's go back. I mean, this is that's a more general thing that's going to apply in a lot of different cases. The thing we have to deal with here is basically what determines the sizing. By the way, why can't I select any of those? All I've got is, and why is it tooltipping? Is that its default activity?
Yes.
If I can only hit it. Well, I mean, but that's not working.
Yeah.
Right? Look, I mean, let's go bigger and see whether I can hit it then. Why are there two Danish flags?
I think that's Norwegian.
Oh. Well,
and one is Norway and one is Svalbard.
Oh, cool. I see. They were two countries. Right.
Yeah, I've looked at that case before.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I should know that, given that I actually even visited Svalbard a year and a half ago, whatever. Okay, fair enough. What does the Danish flag look like now? It's one of those? I don't remember.
It's probably a cross, but I don't know which one.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So back to this. How do we I see we have another comment on our live stream from Michael Hale. I wish image collage had masking options like word cloud. I can never get the shape I want with image collage. Unfortunately, this isn't quite the right team to talk about that. But what is the issue here? Image collage.
Right. I mean, I think he wants to do an image collage into
Now make a
an irregular
arrow.
shape, perhaps, or possibly involving
the shape.
flipping out.
I see that. Wait a minute. Image size, display size of the image. Oh,
I mean, that's just a normal image size.
Yeah. Maybe it's the question of what shape the individual images end up. I'm not sure. Well, clarify if you can. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think the question is like if you had, say different flags or something, and you wanted to stuff them into the U.S.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, okay. So he says image collage has a couple of layouts, but word cloud, I can make words in the shape of another giant word. Yes.
Very meta.
Yes. Yes. No, I don't know why image. Are you sure image collage doesn't have some kind of outer boundary to use the fitting method to create the collage? What? Yeah, it's an interesting question. Why?
I mean, so far as I know, it's fitting into a rectangle always, but
right. Well, I'll ask the question. We'll send something to Shadi and ask the question.
Yeah. And I think maybe you can control the shape of the rectangle.
Well, with image size, but you can't control.
You can't use a disk or something.
Yeah. I'm just arbitrary boundary like word cloud. We'll see whether we can get an answer to that. Okay, let's come back here. How to apply the label. So the difficulty is we could just, so the self case, we don't even have a way to specify that, right? It's not a call out. What is it?
Right.
It needs a name. In other words, that is, and it even needs a name for other plots, because what you've got there, it's a thing where the label takes over the point, basically.
Right.
It's an overlay type thing. And I wonder whether we could actually use, call out versus, let's just look. Overlay, I think, has its own thing. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
No, that's not what you want.
But that's what we need is another wrapper, right? Because we need a wrapper that represents be on top of the thing.
Right. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a separate wrapper.
Well, what wrapper could it be?
I mean, it could be part of call out or labeled, as, that third position, which are then, the position for where to put the label is sort of special cased as settings of labeling function. So you remember when we said labeling function goes to above, that's really the same as saying, labeled this, that, above.
Yeah, I understand. But I'm thinking that, let me see. So, but don't you agree that, I think they're going to wind up being different options that you want for the put me on top. Maybe not. First of all, in call out, there's a question of whether we should have an image size. And it seems to me we should have an image size in call out. But that is an easy decision.
And that affects the size of the label.
It affects the image size is the image size of the call out. Right? It's of the thing which is the label in the call out.
Right. That's what I mean. Not including the leader and.
Right, which suggests we also have an image size in labeled itself.
Right.
Okay, so that's one thing. And now the question of how you do an on top label. Overlay might have been an okay word. There are probably other words. Affixed, horrible. Let me see. Placed, no, we've already used it. Not sure. Okay, so that's but for right now, I mean, labeled with, okay, but so now the question is there a cheap way to insert that image size thing in something like this, even though it's equivalent to the image size option of the callouts?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, what is this defaulting to? Is this a labeled with center? Is that how those things are being put there?
That is center, and I think it maybe even has a little bit of special behavior on the
which is otherwise known as the thing that we don't have right now.
Correct, because it's turning off the point.
Yeah, right. Well, so it's the thing we don't have right now.
Right.
It's the display as the label.
Yes. Right now it's the ubiquitous automatic.
Okay. All right. Well, fine. But so we need a name for this display as label. That's really the. I'm
trying to remember. Did we use self somewhere for something?
Oh God, self is existentially, whatever. Yeah. No.
I mean, in some ways, it's almost identity.
I know, but
poster. Sticker. What are things that cover up?
Yeah, sticker is an interesting idea, but all right, we need a name for this. We don't have it right now. We should probably look at the rest of what we have to do here.
Right.
Sticker post. Sticker is actually kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. I mean, a label is, a sticker.
Mm-hmm.
Stickered as opposed to labeled. Let's see. Sticker is interesting. Yeah. I kind of like that. I mean, that's the best I've seen. I mean, that's the best we've had so far. Let's see. Let's just see whether the dictionary even has that in it. And wonderful, magnificent.
I have never seen that before.
Nor have I. Well, it teaches me to use an online dictionary. Okay. All right. So sticker is a possibility for a thing that just goes on top, which is nice. And then, but then do we have a thing which determines essentially the options of the individual sort of items in the feature space plot? Or do we force people to use the sticker thing, which seems rather horrible?
I mean, I think we still want something like labeling options.
Oh, decal. There's a weird one.
Yes.
No.
But it doesn't know what decal is.
It doesn't know what it is. That's kind of stupid. Decal is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether we have a definition. I just don't know whether decal has the sense of being either a design that is fixed to some surface or a paper bearing the design which is to be transferred to the surface. Yeah, a decal. The problem with the decal is that sometimes they're like little flags, which isn't quite the right meaning.
I mean, I don't think I've ever, that sense of like a flagged decal. But
as opposed to one that's a decal, that's one of those transfery things that you. Well, I'm not sure, but okay. So sticker or decal. Decal sounds better to me, but maybe
I think decal is a slightly fancier word.
Yes,
sticker is more fun.
Yes. Well, okay. So something between those, but that still doesn't address the question of density. It doesn't address the question of having an easy way to specify kind of the overall size here.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have to say, I think, I mean, I have to say, I think that the most promising will be something like item image size. Which is not great. But, I mean, where else do we use? So with item size.
I mean, item size has lots of stuff in it, mostly relating to grid.
But it's also not specified width and height. Yeah, that's a lot of complicated stuff. What would we call the things in a feature space plot? Oh, great. All right, I don't know the answer to this. I don't really like item here either because I think that's a. All right, let's keep going. Do you have notes of these pieces here, or should I be storing this somewhere?
Just send me the notebook when you're done.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so this is really what we have to deal with. I mean, this is, look, it's got to be something image size. Given that we call it labeling function, we could call it label image size.
Label image size or labeling size?
Labeling size might be better. If we've got labeling function, why not have a labeling size as well?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that does actually sounds pretty reasonable.
I mean, and it's 2 words instead of 3, and
that's good. That's good. Now, where else do we have to support it?
Everywhere.
But how do we distinguish the labeling? The issue with labeling, look, you know what? It's going to have to be labeling image size because otherwise it's going to be confusing whether it's a font size.
I mean, right. Although that's, I mean, that's why I like labeling rather than label as the prefix on it.
Yeah, okay. Labeling size is a possibility. Okay, why don't you inventory where else it's needed? And why don't we plan on using it? Are we going to have, oh boy, I don't know even what's an experimental function in this collection anymore. These for this version, yeah, I guess these are still considered experimental. This one I don't consider that experimental anymore. Labeling size seems quite reasonable. That's a perfectly reasonable name of option for what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
And so then the vector stuff is if you open the documentation for vector markers.
Oh boy. A toothpick. Is that the shape of a toothpick?
Kind of pointy on both ends.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But it's that fat in the middle? Well, I guess it extends.
Yeah.
So what's your point here?
It's just a new option. It was part of vector style under the original design.
Okay, but so then this is the analog of plot markers, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it also allows us to more easily position the vectors relative to their point.
Placed. Following settings can be used. Vector markers arrow placed of blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, seems reasonable.
Okay.
And stream markers is the analogous thing, right?
Right, except that it doesn't support placed because streams are sort of longer and...
Right, there's no place to place it.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, quick preview of very important piece of functionality here. How is the Jose group coming along with the actual implementation of this?
I haven't talked to Jose about that for a while. I mean, I think that a lot of his, I forget what the function is being called, but the one that does the combinations and correct arithmetic and that sort of thing, is not in bad shape. And on our side,
so here, for example, if I were to do, okay, go ahead. Yes.
I mean, so we started with sort of the rendering side of things, and now we're into surveying, some actual application areas. And
what are you doing with graphics of an around?
Graphics of an around?
Yeah, graphics of a point. What about a point that has an around as a coordinate?
Nothing, I don't think.
Okay. I mean, you should probably at least deal with it transparently right now. But in the future, there's a question of what the heck that should do.
Right.
I mean, the analogous thing, what happens with point of a quantity?
I don't think anything happens. I think it's not valid, as far as graphics is concerned.
Fine. All right. Okay. So fine. So the graphics is going to have to be, has to be lower level.
Right. I mean, basically graphics is low level, and the visualization functions are the high level things that understand quantities and uncertainty and whatever else.
So if I do this, why does it need both of those arguments? Does it need that or does it not need that?
I don't know if it still needs that. Okay, so it looks like it doesn't.
So let's just, for fun, let's just say
1, 2, or
can if you want to.
I meant 1, 2 without the list to get asymmetric.
Oh, I see. I don't know what that's doing really. Let's say 3, 2. Okay, cool. I mean, I think the serifs on the error bars are kind of, I mean, those are in, they're often used to indicate X uncertainty. And I don't know exactly, you get what I'm saying?
I don't think the caps are used like that, at least not in cases I've seen.
Well, at least in physics, they developed this, I can pull out an example here.
Excellent.
Well, the first plot I looked at doesn't use it in the way that I said it should be used. But I know people have gotten very elaborate with, maybe that's a kind of an abuse of the notation, so to speak, to use the X serifs, the serifs as X uncertainty.
Right. I mean, the cases I think I've seen, usually if you have X uncertainty, it's centered at that point, right? That you end up with a cross sort of thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, this is great. So is this going to make it into 11.3?
No, this is going for 12.
Okay. Well, it's nice though, very nice. And yeah, great. I mean, there's a lot of different places to support.
Right, and we'll start with sort of the obvious ones, and then
we should have had this stuff a long time ago. We
Yep.
had packages for this. I even had this in SMP in 1981. Oh well.
Yes.
So it goes. Okay, well, great. So we've got a few loose ends here, notably the whole business about when to include a label and the label density stuff.
Right.
I suspect that we might want to say something like labeling test or labeling criterion.
I mean, possibly. Certainly not for 11.3.
No, I understand. Labeling density, perhaps. Okay. All right. We should wrap it up.
Okay.
All right. So for those who've been watching the live stream, that's the end of this exciting episode, and we'll have more.
Okay.
See you. Okay.
See
Bye.
you.